This podcast is brought to you by Blackaby Ministries International. To find out more, visit blackaby.org.
Welcome to the Richard Blackaby Leadership Podcast. My name is Sam, and I'm your host, and I'm joined by the one and only Dr. Richard Blackaby.
The one and only. Good to be with you, Sam.
One of the only Buffalo Sabres fans. I think
it's going to be a growing number after this year.
I'm sure. I'll believe it when we are looking back on this season for Buffalo, and I think 2 days into the season, and they've already broke their winning streak of one.
But it was a very convincing loss, a bare loss in the last one. But yeah, I'm actually kind of excited because I'm working out with I actually have become friends of the chaplain of the Buffalo Sabres, and I don't know if we've mentioned before, but you ship at my discretion a bunch of experiencing God day by days to try to help all the Buffalo Sabres play at God's best for them, and we've actually been arranging to bring my two twin grandsons up there to see their first live game, and wow. Chaplain's going to bring them back in after the game to meet the players, and so pretty excited about the indoctrination process going to the next level with those two boys.
If you can't grow the numbers through convincing, you can do it through offspring, and just sort of.
I know I'm going to have to take Claire to a Buffalo game here eventually and convince her.
She probably doesn't take much to convince her, so I think she'd be excited about that. I think we all have people in our lives that. You get around them and you just feel better and you're happier and you're encouraged and you think everything's going to be okay regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah.
And you and I both have people in our lives that they pour into us, they encourage us, they strengthen our walk with the Lord, and almost without fail that you can take it to the bank. This person, if I call them or if I see them at church or at the office, they're just going to be a blessing to our life. And I think as leaders, having someone like that in your life is just of utmost importance.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I had two experiences this past week that were impactful to me. One, of course, was the funeral for my mother, who passed away on September 29th. And she was my biggest fan. She believed in me. She was proud of me. She loved, some people you talk very much about your success and you think, okay, I'm bragging. I need to stop. But my mom, it was like, tell me. She loved to hear about how God had used me or how things had gone well. And it was the one person you didn't feel guilty about just celebrating your success.
Yeah. Not
necessarily bragging, but just having someone you can just genuinely celebrate that is truly delighted for you. And so I kind of thought, as I lost her recently, now I've got to face the rest of my life without that cheerleader. And that was a sobering thought for me. But this a couple of days ago, I was speaking at a big event for CEOs, and I'm not sure there were maybe a bit under 200 people there, and so I had just given a talk one morning, and later that day, a CEO comes up to me, and he is just someone that I've come to know that is just one of the best encouragers I think that I've ever known, and he's worked for a very, very large company. And but he is just famous for buzzing about encouraging people, just looking for, just observing things. And I kind of knew that in the midst of that group of people that he'd eventually find me. And sure enough, and interestingly, he said, you really honored your parents today by the way you spoke. And even though you've lost your mother, I'm sure that she would have been so proud to have heard you. And so it wasn't even just that he said you did a good job, but he very specifically noticed and blessed me and spoke to, at that point in my life, something that I was really wrestling with, which is how do I go forward honoring my mother now that she's no longer with us? And so it made me just think a bit, and you'd mentioned this, Sam, too, just, why is it that there are just some individuals who seem to be so good at encouraging others, and then a lot of people who aren't?
Yeah.
And I would think, especially if you're a Christian leader, that just ought to be something that you want to improve at. So some things will come naturally to us, and then there's just some things, whether they come naturally or not, we need to be better at. And so I want to talk two parts to this. First is just, how do you become an encourager? You might be listening this morning and just saying, well, that's something I'd like to be. I wish I was better at encouraging people, but maybe you grew up and your dad or your mom weren't good at encouraging you, and you would try really hard, and maybe you'd come home with a report card and you'd have all A's and 1 A minus, and your dad would point out, what's with this 1 minus here, instead of saying, wow, like all A's. And so maybe you just grew up where that wasn't natural. Your parents didn't find it easy to offer praise, and maybe in your work life you don't get a lot of praise, and so you come home and you don't know how to give it to your spouse, your kids, or your friends, and so just a couple of things I would say, if you would just say, I would like to be better at that. And maybe you are good at it, but I can promise you there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
And so one thing I would just say is you have to, first of all, just get over yourself. If you are front and center in your world all the time, it is really hard to be a good encourager.
Yeah.
And for that, I would just say, if you are an insecure person, it's very hard to praise other people, because if you're in doubt of your own self-worth, then you have to be comfortable in your own skin if you're going to be able to praise other people. I've known some people that were just very insecure, and they just found it so difficult to praise others. It was almost as if they felt that in acknowledging someone else's worth, it just made them feel even more worthless. And so those kind of people typically find ways to criticize other people, because they can kind of feel like they're pulling people down to their level, to their size. And it's always a fallacy when people think, if I can just tear you down, Sam, it'll make me seem bigger. And it's just, that's not how it works. And so you've got to get over your own insecurities, your own kind of self-absorption with, well, how does this look to me? And he's never praised me and he's never acknowledged me, so why would I do that to him? And you really have to get yourself out of the way and just say, okay. And so secondly, what you have to do is you have to just choose to be someone who blesses people, someone who is an encourager. And some people, I think it comes naturally, but for a lot of us, that's something we just have to choose to do. I mean, I don't know how many people just wake up and say, I just really want to be an encourager to everybody I meet. You're typically not going to, that doesn't come natural. It's something you have to just decide. I want to be the kind of person that does that. And so whether it's someone waiting on your table at a restaurant, or it's a flight attendant or the pilot as you're leaving a plane, learning how to just thank them, learning how to say something positive. I'm on planes all the time, and I'll try, if the captain or the flight attendant is at the the door as you're walking out, I'll try to say thank you as I'm walking out, which is nice. But if you see the pilot and it was a good landing, maybe say something more specific, like, well, great landing today. I know sometimes it can be a really hard landing, and of course it's the famous case.
Thanks for keeping us alive.
Yeah, the famous case where the person walked out after a tough landing and said, Captain, just have a question. Did you land that plane, or were we shot down? It was just so rough. So, but you choose to be a blessing. And third thing is, that goes right with that, is choose to focus on what's positive. And if you're going to bless people, you can't really bless people for what they did wrong. I can't say, Sam, you did a terrible job on that filming. Bless you. Hope you're blessed by that. You feel blessed by what you do right, by what you have success with, and so if you have, and there are a lot of people today that have a very negative lens, and all they see are the things people do wrong, and so it's really hard to be a blesser if all you see is the negative. The people that are best at blessing others and encouraging others are the people that always have their eyes out, they're looking for, watching for positive things that they can be thankful for. Another thing I would just say, it's kind of funny, but you have to get yourself out of the limelight. And I've literally seen people do this where even when they were trying in their own kind of half-hearted way to praise someone else, they really were praising themselves. I'm sure you've heard that too, Sam, where it's like, maybe it's the manager and he's going to recognize a staff today. And it's kind of like, Sam, we just want to recognize you today for the good work you've been doing on producing this podcast. And that's fine if you say that. But then some people will have to go on and say, I knew when I hired you that, I had people say, boy, I don't know if you want to hire Sam, like he's this and that. But I just decide I'm going for my gut feeling that this will be all right. And sure enough, you proved me right. And it's like, okay, wait a minute, who is getting the praise here? Is this Sam getting the praise, or is this the boss praising himself and hiring Sam
through and praising an employee? You think of like, well, I'm so glad you took my advice and made those changes, and that's really paid off for you. And
it's
great?
Like it's kind of almost implied if you just heeded more of my advice, just think how much more successful you'd be. Right, and sometimes it's just so blatant. I mean, I've just seen some people that just blatantly are hogging all the praise. They're like a black hole, sucking in all the praise toward themselves, even when it's a recognition for someone else. And there are those who just they still need that praise. They cannot just give completely detached kind of praise where they don't even come into the picture. It's just all about them. And so if you're going to be good at encouraging people, you can't be looking to get it coming back towards you. It's got to be one way where you're giving it to someone else.
Well, and that implies too that there has to be a genuineness to the blessing, and it's not just I'm doing this so that I can get something in return. It's I'm doing this because I want to do this, and it's the right thing.
Yeah, and I think just kind of really just what you said, but the last point I would have in this section is just, find genuine delight in other people's success. Some people can't do that because they're so frustrated with their own lack of success. They're frustrated that people aren't recognizing their achievements. And so it's really hard to genuinely, you might say the words, you might do the right thing, but to genuinely take pleasure in someone else's success. Hey, Sam, you just got a big promotion. Like, way to go. Like, I'm so happy for you. And I know you work really hard. And now, I didn't get a promotion, and I'm kind of disappointed about that. But I am really genuinely happy that you did. I don't want to think that all the promotions around here are just a pie. If you get one, then I don't. And so I'm resentful of you. Instead, to be able to just genuinely delight when people do well. And I tell you, that comes through loud and clear. You can't. It's hard to fake that. Lots of people just say the polite thing, and then the really good encouragers are the ones who are all smiles and clearly take delight in your good fortune. And that communicate when it's heart to heart, and you're genuinely proud and pleased at their success, then that is the best kind of blessing. And so to do that, you have to have the kind of heart that truly is pleased.
Yeah.
If you're not pleased, if you can't genuinely care, and that, of course, that just comes from loving people. And if you love them, you truly want what's best for them. So, how to be that kind of person, that's some of what I would say. And then just how do you do it? How do you encourage people? And there's a number of points there, but one, it's just simply you've got to be watching for it. If you're not watching for it, you'll miss it, and people will be knocking the ball out of the park all over the place, and you'll be so preoccupied with what you're doing that you didn't even notice what they did, and sometimes, there's many different ways where this happens. It's like, in fact, the other day. Like 2 days ago, I was speaking at a meeting, and I had sent a PowerPoint ahead of time, but then I just neglected to check in to make sure they even had the PowerPoint. I never did talk to the sound booth. And so I'm sitting at the front of the auditorium about to go up. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I should check with the guy in charge. He's sitting 2 seats over from me, and just say, hey, did you get the PowerPoint? Is there any way to make sure that I meant to ask for a clicker or something so I could advance it myself. But I just thought, at this point, I don't want to stress the guy in charge out, and I just won't use the PowerPoint. That's fine. I don't necessarily really need it. There were a couple of good pictures in there, but at this point, I think it's just too late. I kind of failed to check on that when I got to the venue. And so I got up and I'm speaking, not even worrying about it. And then right near the end, I'm using a story that's quite a powerful story, and I did have quite a compelling image I was going to show, and I hear some people kind of gasping, and so I turned, and sure, lo and behold, I didn't even realize it, but they have been doing the PowerPoint. It was all the screens were behind me, and I had never looked behind me to see if it was up or not, and so afterward, I asked our staff, Stephen, that was with me, and he said, "Oh yeah, they followed right along like everything." And I hadn't queued them up. I hadn't told them, this picture goes with this story or anything. And a lot of times, even when I tell people which PowerPoints to use and slides to bring up, they get it wrong.
Usually, it's the reluctant volunteer on the slideshow. But like, I thought afterward, these guys, like when you're running the sound booth and there's static, there's feedback, or the sound isn't working, well, then everybody notices. Yeah. Oh boy, the sound guy, like he really messed up on that one. But when time after time it works perfectly, you never stop to think, you know what, like there wasn't a problem there. Like what we tend to do is just not notice when things go the way you think they're supposed to. Yeah.
All you got to do is have a few things go poorly. It's like just let the 2 pilots in a row slam on the tarmac when they land. And then when the next guy lands so softly that you don't even notice when you've actually touched ground, then you start to really appreciate those soft landings. So, so it's easy when someone does a good job. A lot of times you can kind of think, well, that's how it's supposed to be. That's they're paid to do it that way.
Yeah.
But all you got to do is suffer when people don't do things the way it's supposed to be done. And then you realize, wow, I love working with that guy, because every time he does the sound or he runs the PowerPoint, he takes care of details. It always just gets done. There's just not a problem. And so be on the lookout, be watching for that. And otherwise, you'll miss a bunch of it. Like there's a bunch of people, like I would just say overall, I think since COVID, a lot of the service industry has taken a significant step down.
Yeah.
That we're not getting the level of service that we probably expected before COVID. And I think that's just pretty well across the board what's happening. Staff shortages all over the place. So when all of a sudden someone does above and beyond, you ought to notice. It should stand out right now, especially. Yeah. And so that's one. And maybe one other one just to mention for the break is, and I think this is really, I can't emphasize this enough. If you really want to be good at praising people, then do it specifically. Don't do it generally. It's fine to you walk by someone and say nice job or just thanks, like the pilot, and I've tended to probably to do this too much. Where I mean, there's only so much you can say. I wasn't watching them in the cockpit, so I don't know a lot of what they were doing or not doing.
You got us to 33,000 feet there.
I noticed when you made that adjustment when we hit turbulence at 29,000 feet, and I was wondering.
That you took on that climbing angle.
Yeah. When you dodged that flock of geese, I was really pleased. You so much you don't notice, but like a soft landing where it's just, you hardly feel it. Like there's certain things, if you're paying attention, you may notice and say, wow, like that was really good. Someone needs to notice that, because they're going to notice if they slam onto the tarmac.
Yeah.
But how many of us notice when you can't even tell for sure when you actually touch down because it was so smooth. So say things specifically, because that tells them, like there's lots of just polite things that you can say.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to trash the South because there's lots of great things about the South, but the South historically have been quite polite, but a lot of it is just what you say.
It's just lip service.
It's not.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's better than not saying anything at all. But the real impactful encouragers are not the ones who just always say that all the time, regardless of what kind of service or performance is done. The great encouragers are the one who very specifically notice something, and they come up and then they say, you know what? I just love it the way that you do this. You're just one of the best I know at this. And sure enough, today you nailed it again. And you are just so creative. I'm looking at those PowerPoints you did. I don't know anyone who does a better job of that. Or there's just so many ways. A waiter, a waitress. It's fine just to say thank you. I mean, it never hurts to say thank you. But it's always more encouraging if you say thank you for, wow, you were really quick on that, or thanks for getting that order kind of cleared up when the chef got it mixed up, or thanks for being patient with my baby when I had special requests, or thanks for helping out with this, or thanks for that. That is, if you really want to be a good encourager, always don't just leave it at thanks. Fill in the blank. Thank you for, because that says you notice. That's if you just say thanks, it just may mean you're a polite person. If you say thank you for blank, now that means you're observant. It means you actually were an eyewitness to what they did, and you appreciated something specifically. And so praise always has more impact if it's specific instead of general.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break here, and we'll wrap up when we come back. The CSB Experiencing God Bible invites you to know and experience God personally. In this revised and updated edition, based on the best-selling Experiencing God book and Bible study, you will be encouraged to focus on the major purpose of Bible reading, listening to God speak. Experiencing God features and study helps placed throughout the Bible provide an immersive reading experience that will guide and challenge you to respond to the invitations God offers to know Him, His purposes, and His ways. The Bible is on sale now at blackabystore.org, and you can find links to these in the show notes. Richard, before the break, you were talking about having specific praise for people, and
wow, that's very good of you to remember that, Sam.
Yeah, I really liked how you did that. Most people would just be real general about it. I think that gets back to the idea of being intentional and being authentic in the praise that you give, and having specific praise for people is just that sign of authenticity. And maybe just in the few minutes we have left here, I'm betting you've got a couple of other notes here that you'd like to share.
Well, and that word authenticity is a great word, Sam, because that leads to the next one, which is, here's another one. It's perhaps subtle, but it has a huge difference and impact. And that is, it's fine to say, hey, you did a great job with that. Or that was, hey, thank you for that. And even saying something like, hey, you designed that PowerPoint. Great job on that. That's fine. Now you've been more specific. But if you really want to bless someone as well, encourage someone, then share how what they did affected you personally. Like if you hear your pastor preaches and you want to encourage him, it's fine to say, thanks for the sermon today, preacher. Well, that you might just say that because you're polite. Or you could say, Pastor, that was a really interesting sermon today. I'm sure there are people here today who really needed that. Well, that's a little more specific, right? But if you say, thanks for the sermon today, Pastor, that what you said really spoke to me today. I just seem like every Sunday God just gives you something that's just for me, and I've just grown so much as I've sat under your ministry. That is. Yeah, that's going another level, right? Yeah. It's like, Sam, I'm sure someone out there appreciates what you do. So it's more specific than just saying, thanks, Sam. Yeah. But when you say, Sam, I really appreciate your ministry encourages me. I tell you what, of all the people that I have listened to, God just uses you every week to bless me personally. Well, that is going up, and that is making it much more personal to you as the one giving the blessing, right? Mm-hmm. So if you really want to bless someone and encourage them, notice what they're doing. and notice specific things they're doing. And if you can, share how those specific things they did impacted you and why you're so grateful for what they did. Mm-hmm. It's not that you're sure someone out there must be grateful. No, I'm grateful. And that's why I've come to you. I'm looking you in the eye and I'm telling you what you did and what you do makes a huge difference to me. And then it goes without saying, but it needs to be said, and that is say your praise, speak it out. And I've known so many people, and a lot of times this happens in marriage, where a husband really appreciates the fact that his wife always has, if she's the cook in the family and she's always making a great meal and she's taking care of things. He may love that. I mean, he may just think he's the luckiest guy on the earth, but he just never says it and never says how grateful he is for her and how much he loves her and appreciates her and the way she goes the second mile just to, care for him or whatever. And so if you don't say it, then it's not encouraging. That it matters not the least what you think or how you feel. The only encouragement that matters is what you express. And so just learn to express it. And again, I'm sure that there are listeners who just did not grow up in that environment. And honestly, it may seem awkward to you because you never heard it said in your home. And so I know what that feels like, because there's times where I've really felt some appreciation, and it just, I didn't always come naturally to me for some reason. And so I had to almost force myself, but I know that unless I get those words out, it doesn't matter at all. They will not be in the least bit encouraged by what I thought, unless I actually say it. So don't just think it. If you think it, then say it. In some way, get out. Now, and a similar one is you can also write it, because, and I've told some stories before of times where I really felt impressed about someone, but maybe they were a speaker and there were a lot of people they were talking to. It just didn't seem appropriate for me to, go over there and take them away from who they were speaking to. But learn to just send a quick text afterward. I've done that a number of times. Some sermons, my brother's my pastor. There's times that while he's still preaching, I mean, I know he's not going to check his text messages while he's preaching. He doesn't even have his phone on him usually, but I know that he's going to go back to his office afterward, and there'll be a text, and I'll be quoting something specifically he said and say, that was a awesome insight, or that really got me thinking. And I'll tell you what, for public speakers, when someone actually quotes something you said and they actually quote you correctly, I've had people quote me completely incorrectly. Yeah. When you said this, it really touched my heart, and I know I didn't say what they're saying. That's not even my theology, but when but learn to write it down. Learn to just text people. Texting is easy, or email them, or communicate in some way. I'll tell you what, whenever I preach at our home church, it's really encouraging. I've had people that posted something I said on Facebook, or they made some kind of comment about, or posted something on my site, and when they quote what I said, it's not just nice sermon today, but wow, when you said this, that just lit the room up for me. And that always is such an encouragement. Another way you can encourage people is just praise people to others. It's fine for me to come and say, Sam, you did a great job. But if three people...
does everyone know that I
did a great job? Like, it's not enough for me to know that.
I need you to tweet
Who have
about
I told? And so, but when others come to you and say, "Hey, Sam, your boss is always singing your praises to me," then that's another way. It's indirect, but it shows that you're even more sincere about it, because I could just be saying that to you so that you're okay with working here. But if it's obvious I'm going around bragging on you to others, well, then that means I must really believe that. Like I'm a big fan, and so. My mother used to always do that. She'd always be bragging on her kids to others, but
you do that with your kids and grandkids as well.
Yeah,
you definitely inherited that from your mother.
Yeah, I could
quite shamelessly at times.
I know. Lisa sometimes says I'm fishing. Did you notice my grandchild? How cute she is today? It's like, Richard, you're fishing for compliments. But they deserve those compliments. And so last couple things. and if you are again, just kind of what I said earlier, if you're going to praise them, leave all the praise to them. Don't start taking the credit for the praise you're giving them. And when you do praise someone, you don't go on and on and on. It can get awkward. I've had people that took too long to tell me what a good job I'd done, and it just gets awkward at a certain point. It just seemed like fawning at a certain point. Just it doesn't have to be long. It could be a sentence or two, but something specific that you noticed, how it affected you, and just how grateful you are, and leave it there. I know sometimes it's hard to land that plane sometimes if you're not accustomed to doing it, but usually briefer is better. Because it's almost like if you go on too long, they're like, "What is he trying to sell me? What's he do
after here?"
He didn't just thank me. It's like he won't just let this thing lie. So keep it succinct, and be clear. You have no ulterior motives. Kind of goes along with that. Sometimes, like you just want to say, "I just wanted to let you know what you did this morning. Your presentation really challenged me. It was a real blessing. I just want to let you know, thank you." And then. That's all, It's not like, oh, and by the way, would you have time to do this for me?
Something that's,
yeah, and I've had people say that too. It's like, well, I'm going to be speaking over here. I'd love it if you could come and be in my audience. And it's like, no, undiluted encouragement means there's no strings attached to this. Yeah. I simply lay it out there to you and thank you for what you did. And then the last, be clear that there's no ulterior motives. And then maybe one last one is just periodically recall, like circle back around. And so, for instance, let's say that you run the sound at things I do. And then just when I see you, maybe I even joke about, hey, there's my number one sound man, or you tell others, hey, if I'm ever speaking, there's no one I want more than this guy to be my. And it's like maybe you haven't even done it. It's been a month since I work with you, but now and then just bring it up and say that. But that's something I always think of when I think of Sam, is how well he is at this or how good he is at that. And so in a sense, it becomes a little more authentic too, because I'm not just thanking you in the moment because it's the polite thing to do, but a month later, I'm still bringing it back up.
Yeah, and you're recognizing those patterns in people as well. If you have repeat interactions with people and you get to know, you just notice that pattern that they're always prepared or whatever it may be, that you just sort of highlight that for them.
Yeah, and I do a number of repeat conferences where I'll go back year after year and I'll work with the very same people there each time I go back. And there's a number of people that really take good care of me. They handle me well. They communicate well. They always have things in place. If there's a last minute need I have, and maybe I've got to, hey, listen, I'm so sorry, but I've got to slip out and do a Zoom call. Do you have a room nearby that I could just slip into? And, oh yeah, we got it all set up. Everything's in place. I went up there and checked, made sure it was good. Then you just, so when I see those people year in and year out, I'm just already praising them and just letting them know that what a delight it always is to work with them, because I always know they do such great work. And so, if you just become, as you develop different relationships with folks who do various things in your world, just kind of make a mental note to just regularly thank them or bring it up or acknowledge again how good they are at something. And after a while, those people really want to have you come back, and they want to work with you again, because you just have a way of always making them feel better. And so I always just encourage folks, when you're out and traveling and about and just doing the work that you do, look behind you and see who you're leaving in your wake. Are you leaving a bunch of people that just love working with you? And I, like I said, I try to be like that. And I have a lot of the work I do, a lot of the speaking I do is return speaking, like year after year after year. I'll be invited back and I'll be working with those same people again. And if you are someone who encourages and notices and thanks, you might be amazed at how many times you get a return invitation, because when you come back, you notice and you thank and you're grateful, and people they just long to receive that, and you can be a blessing. So we all could do better. I could certainly do better, But it begins by just being intentional and saying, I just want to learn and be a little more intentional and focused about being an encourager.
Yeah. Well, this is it's been an encouragement to go through this with you.
You're always
Richard.
so good about that, Sam.
Well, no, you really shine in the encouragement department. And before we go on too far, we'll just stop here.
Yeah, we
and,
probably should. Yeah.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is something you enjoyed, it really makes a difference if you leave a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. We always love hearing from our listeners, so email us at podcast@blackaby.org.